It's day one of verdict watch in the Derek Chauvin trial, why soccer fans are at odds over the creation of a new league, and how Americans' views on pot have changed on this 420. Tuesday Need to Know, let's go. Good morning, this is Cheddar's Need to Know podcast for Tuesday, April 20th. I am Jill Wagner with Carlo Versano. Hi, Carlo.
Good morning, Jill. You made it. You were in some traffic this morning, huh?
It was, it's just crazy that at 5:30, even before that, it was like 5:28, I was in almost bumper-to-bumper traffic. It's just nuts.
The Long Island Expressway. That's what you get.
All right. Okay, let's do some news here. Derek Chauvin's fate is in the hands of 12 of his peers. After 14 days of witness testimony, the prosecution in the Derek Chauvin trial summed up its case in closing arguments to the jury as simply, "You can believe your eyes." Meanwhile, the defense asked them to look at the totality of the circumstances and the 16 minutes that came before that 9 minute and 29 seconds of Derek Chauvin kneeling on George Floyd's neck. Chauvin's legal team also asking for a mistrial, which was denied, citing the intense media exposure and particularly a comment from Congresswoman Maxine Waters, who said over the weekend that prosecutors should get, quote, more confrontational if the jury doesn't return a guilty verdict. Even the judge, Carlo, who denied the mistrial, said that those comments from Maxine Waters, not helpful, and actually could be the basis of an argument behind any type of appeal if the defense appeals the decision.
Sure. The jurors, half of whom are white, half of whom are people of color, they're being sequestered at a local hotel in downtown Minneapolis, which is basically a fortress awaiting this verdict. The charges they are deliberating are second and third degree murder and second degree manslaughter. So as I've said, I think that if they come back with a verdict that is anything other than murder 2 or murder 3, I do think that we're probably going to see some serious nationwide unrest. That said, this is the judicial system at work. Derek Chauvin is entitled to due process, as is everyone else, one of the things that makes this country great. I do want to address, Jill, before we move on, just something I said about Adam Toledo. This was the boy who was killed by police in Chicago last month. That was back in the news. We were talking about it last week because of the body cam video that was released. You know, I asked the other day, whenever that was, Thursday maybe, I said, where are the parents, right? I said, you know, the parents have some responsibility for this because this little boy was running around shooting guns with his friend in a back alley in the middle of the night. That may have come across as insensitive. Some people wrote in saying that they took that to mean that I was being insensitive or worse by blaming the kid's family for his death, and that if he committed a crime, it doesn't mean police have the right to shoot him. Well, obviously that's true. But, you know, I do stand by what I said, that there is some personal responsibility in some of these cases. And, you know, why this boy was allowed to put himself in a situation where he's carrying a gun, running from the police. You know, regardless of what crime you may or may not have committed, if you're interacting with a police officer and you have a gun in your hand, that is just asking for trouble. In this case particularly, this boy threw that gun on the ground just before he spun around and he put his hands up. But now you're relying on a cop in the dark making the right split-second decision. And that should not be a situation that we should get in. So again, I appreciate that what I said may have come across as offensive, and I'm sorry if that was the case, but I just wanted to get on the record with that.
A lot of people on social media had pointed out, though, the stark, and I'm glad, thank you, Carlo, for mentioning it. A lot of people, though, on social media, as I was saying, pointing out the stark difference just between the way police treated 13-year-old Adam Toledo, who had a handgun, he was Hispanic, and 17-year-old Kyle Rittenhouse, who's white. You may remember him from the Kenosha protests, who police actually saw walking around with an assault rifle, who actually shot people.
Of course, right.
And then in the aftermath, a security breach showed that some police have actually donated to his legal defense. Of
course, yeah.
And I hate the apples to oranges. You know, I hate comparing stuff because every situation is different and bad in its own right. You know what I'm saying? Like each case of these is troubling and stands on its own. But it does tell you. I mean, it's just,
No
when you
question.
look at it like that, it's hard not to see perhaps race as a factor here.
Oh, absolutely. And police would have been within their right to have shot Rittenhouse, and the fact that they didn't does tell you something.
All right, switching gears. If you need a COVID test, you can now get one over the counter at CVS, Walgreens, and Walmart. Abbott Labs' recently approved rapid test delivers results in 15 minutes without the need for a lab, and it costs about $25. Hospitalizations and deaths still trending in the right direction here in the U.S., but the virus raging out of control in countries like India and Brazil. The global death toll has now surpassed 3 million. The State Department has adjusted its advisories for travelers, putting 80% of countries worldwide under a level 4 do not travel warning. Here in the U.S., by the way, Colorado becoming the newest hotspot. Michigan still
I
really,
haven't seen
really
that,
bad,
really?
but Colorado, one to watch.
Okay, we'll keep an eye on that. I learned yesterday, speaking of travel, we're actually still not letting in non-U.S. citizens from the Schengen countries of the EU. I learned that because Becky's parents are trying to get here to meet their soon-to-be born grandchild, and we don't know if they're going to be able to. So, just something to note. I didn't realize that was still the case. One thing, back to the issue of vaccine hesitancy, one thing that I was just thinking about that could help us on the margins with that is walk-in clinics, right? As of now, you have to make an appointment to get a vaccine. And that's not easy for everybody, especially if you're not good with computers, if you're older maybe. So I think that, and I'm hoping that we're going to start to see this, is that it's going to get to the point where you can just walk into CVS or one of these mass vaccination sites and just get a shot. And, my latest crazy idea, I don't know, maybe this is really crazy, but why don't we just pay people? I mean, seriously, give people like $200 per shot. I guarantee that if you did that, a significant portion of the vaccine hesitant cohort would take that. Because I think a lot of people are iffy, but they're not completely against the idea. And I think money would actually put them over the edge. Or here's another idea. Let's bring back the Johnson & Johnson vaccine and just give it to men. I mean, that sounds sort of ridiculous, but I'm only half kidding. We could even market it like one and done because your busy lifestyle demands it or something. Market it like they market pickup trucks to guys. Let's think big. I feel like we're not taking this seriously enough. These vaccines are our generation's moon landing, just in terms of the scientific breakthrough that they gave us. And I feel like it's still not being taken as seriously as it should. The more I read about this mRNA technology and the potential that it has for other diseases, the more astounding it is to me that human beings are even capable of doing what we did.
Yeah, it is incredible. The idea of paying people is interesting. $200 might be a little steep, but I guess if you consider the cost of putting someone in the hospital potentially who gets COVID. But I completely agree. It's time to get rid of the appointment requirement. Everybody should just be walk-in only. There's enough vaccines.
Mobile clinics.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a lot of people who are talking about that and pushing for that. Especially here in New York. President Trump was actually on Sean Hannity last night. I don't know if you heard about it. And
I heard, but I didn't see.
I did not watch, but I did read some of the transcript, and he apparently is encouraging people to get the vaccine. It's not like a crazy wholehearted get the vaccine.
Right.
It's no Carlo Versano endorsement, but it is. He seemed to recommend it. And he criticized very much the feds pausing Johnson & Johnson and that vaccine. He said, first he said, I encourage people to take it. And he said, it is the worst thing you could have done from a public relations standpoint, and it probably even affects the other vaccines a little bit. What the FDA did with Johnson & Johnson is so stupid.
Well, he's right about that. By the way, did you see Scott Gottlieb the other day? He made a great point that I hadn't even thought of.
No, what did
in
he
the
say?
Wall Street Journal. He was saying, because it was the CDC that paused J&J, really. It was like the CDC in consultation with the FDA. But he made the point that why is the CDC getting involved in drug safety? That's the FDA's job. And he was making the point that if it was just the FDA, this would not have happened because it was the CDC that came out and demanded the pause. And, the rest is history.
Okay, Brian Sicknick, the Capitol police officer who was injured during the January 6th riot, suffered a stroke and died of natural causes the next day, according to the D.C. Medical Examiner. That finding is going to make it a bit more difficult for prosecutors to pursue a homicide case against the two men who have been accused of spraying Sicknick with a chemical irritant outside the Capitol that day.
Something has never smelled right about this. Why it took them more than 3 months to give the cause of death in this case, especially if he just died of natural causes. I don't understand. I never will understand why that happened. And all that did is just create a bunch of conspiracy theories and, finger pointing about this. Also, semi-related, I guess you could say, Apple letting Parler back on the App Store. That's the social media app that was very popular among the far right. It was used to plan some of the events of January 6th. So that app is now being sort of unbanned. And basically, they're just being told that they have to try and keep hate speech and violence off of the platform. So we'll see if they're able to do that.
That's an interesting decision by Apple. I'm curious how long it lasts and what concessions they had to make. Speaking of Apple, they're holding their first media event of the year today. The company is expected to unveil an iPad refresh. The Spring Forward event could also bring a redesigned iMac or the long-rumored AirTag tracking device. It could also involve a podcast subscription service. The live stream starts at 1 p.m. Eastern. What is a long-rumored AirTag tracking device?
They're
Sounds like nothing I want to be a part of.
It's like, those things that I think they're called tile. They're basically like little pieces of plastic that have a Bluetooth chip in them. And so you can like put it in your purse so that if you lose your purse, you can track it down, like how they have
so
Find My iPhone.
Let's call it what this is. They're tracking your every move.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, I don't know why you would want that. Although I say that as somebody who loses everything, so maybe I would. I've always thought that Apple was going to do a podcast subscription service. We'll see if that happens today, because its podcast app is just so bad. It's so bad, especially for Apple, that I've always thought that they've purposely sort of torpedoed it and made it that bad so that they can build a product that is better and then charge for it. So we'll see. Facebook, by the way, also announcing a bunch of new audio initiatives yesterday, including basically a competitor to Clubhouse. And also, just on this note, one thing, I have a new podcast app that I've been using, and it's called
Oh my God, I
Overcast.
thought you were going to say you have a new podcast. I'm like, how dare you, Carlo?
No, come on. Are you kidding me? That would be, can you imagine if I just announced that without telling you? No, what was I saying? Oh, this podcast app. It's called Overcast. Check it out. It's free. It's really intuitive. It's really easy to use. I'm curious if anyone else out there has used it.
I wonder if the Facebook Clubhouse rival will also be hosting numerous anti-Semitic chat rooms as Clubhouse does. I can't even get into it. Clubhouse, it's frightening what's going on there. And if you care at all about anti-Semitism, some of these rooms, it's crazy. I don't want to get into it because it's like a much bigger conversation that we should probably do as a full story later in the week.
Sure.
But Clubhouse needs to figure out how they're going to tamp down on hate speech. And look, all of these social media platforms are reflections of society. So if you give people a platform to speak freely or post freely, you're going to get something great, and you're also going to get, the not so great people that are around and don't, and are anti-Semitic or have whatever biases they have. But you need to, it's not a safe space. You have to figure out, like, I'm not going on it anymore. It's just an unacceptable platform. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah, we should talk about that more.
Today is 420, the pseudo-holiday made popular by stoners to celebrate weed. New polling shows just how far public perception of marijuana has come since a group of California teenagers came up with the idea for the holiday back in the 1970s. According to Pew Research, 91% of U.S. adults now support legalizing pot in some form. 60% think it should be legal for medical and recreational use. 31% say it should be legal for just medical use. And just 8% say it should be illegal.
The age breakdown in this poll, I thought, was somewhat notable. Less than a third of Americans 75 and older support legalization. For people under the age of 30, it's 70%. I guess that kind of makes sense, right? Old people are just they're of the sort of, they're of the generation where this was like a really bad drug, I guess. Anyway, federal legalization, it's such an easy win for Biden. I still don't know why he hasn't pursued it. But there is one
Well,
one
he's
issue
of
about
that
marijuana.
generation.
Yeah, I guess I mean, that honestly could be it. It's a good point. There is one issue though about weed, and people have wrote it in about this, and it's something that I've noticed just in my own life. The potency of weed right now is really something to talk about openly. You know, the I don't know if you haven't consumed cannabis lately, the weed that is on the market now, it will hit you like a ton of bricks if you're not careful. It is not the same stuff that you were smoking out of a dime bag in high school. Like it might as well be a completely different drug. I'm
Really?
obviously yeah, I mean, I'm obviously pro legalization for numerous reasons, but we do need to do a better job, I think, of explaining to people, especially young people, who may think that they can just sort of hit a vape pen or smoke a joint and then like drive a car or operate heavy machinery. Like this is not this stuff is, it's legit. It'll put you on your butt.
Very interesting. Okay, backlash has been building in Europe over the announcement from some of the bigger soccer clubs on the continent that they have agreed to join a breakaway league. The European Super League would compete with the Champions League, one of the most prominent club tournaments in the world in terms of soccer. So Real Madrid, Barcelona, Man U, Liverpool, Juventus, and AC Milan are among the founding members of the Super League, which would create a revenue-sharing model among the clubs that would completely change the financial structure of the sport. The new league is far from a done deal. European soccer officials are trying to block the project. FIFA's warned that any players who join an unsanctioned league would be disqualified from the World Cup. This is a whole lot of drama, Carlo.
It is a whole lot of drama, and I'm not really into the weeds on European soccer, so I don't want to say something that's going to be wrong because people take this stuff very seriously. But I mean, my general rule of thumb is to be in favor of whatever FIFA is against, because FIFA is basically one step removed from an organized crime syndicate. But it does seem like there are real concerns about the Super League. I think the way to think about it, if you're not really familiar with the workings of international soccer, it would be like if the Yankees, the Cubs, the Red Sox, and the Astros left Major League Baseball and just decided to start their own league under the argument that they make most of the revenue for the MLB, just in terms of like television deals, so that they should take most of the profits. And then what would that do, to the rest of the sport? So that's sort of that appears to be sort of the baseline argument.
You know what? I'm going to reach out to our old colleague, Jeffrey Marcus. He had a newsletter all about the World Cup.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's really into soccer. So I'm going to see what he should come on. If there's interest out there, we should definitely do something with him. Yeah. Near and dear to my heart, Downton Abbey fans have some good news here. The cast of the original movie is returning for the long-rumored sequel to the movie. It's already in production. It's scheduled for theatrical release this Christmas. Downton creator Julian Fellows is penning a screenplay. In addition to the regulars, Hugh Dancy from Hannibal, Laura Haddock from The Guardians of the Galaxy, and my favorite, Dominic West from The Wire, are joining the cast. I am so excited. I sent this to Carlo as soon as this broke yesterday, and I said, please put this in the newsletter. We're putting it in the podcast. Great show. The movie succeeded in being a good movie that was based on a series.
Right.
Usually they're just so brutal, but this one actually worked.
I have to say, this is one of those properties that would have no interest in, just like does not appeal to me. But I thought that about The Crown, Jill, and you told me to watch The Crown, and I fell in love with it. So I'm going to look at Downton with a fresh set of eyes because of you.
The first thing you need to do is watch The Wire. Okay,
I
that
know.
needs to be the first. My husband always actually says, like, until Carlo watches The Wire, I don't know about him. Okay, so watch The Wire. It's the best show. It still holds, right? Like, it's one of those shows that is still good even after all of these years. I've watched it all 5 seasons numerous times.
It's next on the list. We're doing a Breaking Bad watch right now. When that's done.
Gotcha. And the thing about Downton Abbey, though, it's funny. My husband also was like, "What are you watching?" I mean, it's slow. It kind of, when you just peek at it, when someone else is watching it, it looks like really slow and not like anything you'd be interested. But then during the pandemic, when he was out of shows, I would notice on Netflix or wherever it is we watch it, or Amazon Prime, I'm like, is someone rewatching Downton Abbey? Why is Downton Abbey coming up high on the queue? And then I caught him. He watched it.
You have been called out, Mike. By the way, Dominic West, he's in The Affair. Did you ever watch that show?
Yes, he's
That was a
great
good
in
show
that
for a
too.
couple seasons. Yeah, he's really good.
It went off the rails a little bit, but it was
It got bad, but it was
awesome.
good in the beginning.
And NASA's Mars helicopter, the Ingenuity, made space history. I feel like I just said this as an aside. This is huge news. This could be a lead story, okay?
Yes.
They made their first successful flight, their helicopter did. The small copter took off from the Martian surface. It flew about 10 feet high. It hovered for about 30 seconds before descending. It's the first time something from Earth ever achieved a controlled liftoff and landing on another planet. The video doesn't look like much, but the feat of engineering behind this 30-second flight is nothing short of remarkable. This flight had been delayed a couple times because I think a technical glitch and maybe other reasons, but it's amazing. This is such big news.
I got goosebumps watching this yesterday. There's no atmosphere on Mars, right? So there's no way to get lift naturally because there's no air to push against. So what they did is they had to spin these two rotors in opposite directions to generate enough air to create the lift. That's sort of the dumbed down general physics behind it. But just awesome. I mean, truly awesome, Jill. The Wright brothers' first flight, I mean, it was really not that impressive when you think about it in context, but it got us the modern day airplane, right? This is how these things start. And in the same way, this could conceivably create a whole new way to explore planets. Think about it, right? If you're not bound by the conditions of the surface, if you could land a rover on a different planet and launch a helicopter to go check out, the other parts of it, that could be incredible. I mean, the cost of this mission, by the way, this Perseverance mission that they're doing, $2.7 billion. That's nothing. We spent that money like in a minute, just in, the federal government in this country spends that money probably in a day. And the IRS, by the way, said last week that the government loses $1 trillion a year just from tax cheats. So just keep that in mind when people start saying like, oh, we don't need NASA, we don't need space exploration, it's a waste of money. It isn't. It's nothing. And look at what it's bringing us.
$2.7 billion. That's what you basically want to pay people to get the vaccine.
$2.7 billion. Well, that'd be a little.
I was trying to bookend the podcast.
Yes,
I don't think it was successful. Obviously, that 2.7 would have been divided by all of the hesitant people.
Well, honestly, that they should do that. That wouldn't be that much in the scheme of things to do that. To get us to herd immunity, it would be cheap at the cost.
I agree. Okay, Carlo, we're out of here. That's what you need to know for Tuesday, April 20th.
See you mañana.